Jazz have a night. It was against the Chicago Bulls, but there's a lot to talk about. Let's go over it. It's the Hoops Nerd Show. All right, guys, before we get into it, let's give a shout out to our sponsor, Prize Picks. As always, go to prizepicks.com, use promo code HoopsNerd. They will match up to $100. You post a $10 bet on a couple guys, you can win up to $200 if you do a 6-person bet. And if you go to prizepicks.com, use promo code HoopsNerd, a $5 bet becomes a $10 bet. Plus, it supports the channel, so go do it, guys. I would appreciate it. All right, let's talk about this. The Utah Jazz just got smoked by the Chicago Bulls. There's some things that we got to go over because there's some things that got to change. I don't know if there needs to be blame given to everyone, but there's some blame that does need to be given to a few guys. And so we're going to talk about it. Let's shrink me. The last thing you want to look at besides this putrid Jazz is my face. Before we talk about this, the Chicago Bulls had been struggling. They had lost 3 in a row coming into this game. And so then they come in and promptly destroy the Jazz. So bad stuff for the Utah Jazz. Just a bad loss overall. There's no way to sugarcoat this thing. I mean, we'll try to put some lipstick on this pig, but this is an ugly pig of a loss for the Jazz. But the Chicago Bulls did play well tonight. They shot the lights out. They're an NBA team, and they were shooting poorly from 3 coming into this. Obviously, not every team is going to shoot poorly every single night, and tonight was their night to shoot the ball, and they absolutely did. But the question comes, is that because the Jazz the Jazz defense was terrible, or was that because the Bulls offense figured some things out? Probably a little of both. But you got to give some credit when you lose these games to the other team who just played better. And that was definitely for sure tonight. The Bulls just played absolutely better than the Jazz. Zach LaVine had a nice night, 24 points, and DeMar DeRozan had a nice night with 21 on really good efficiency, which is a sign of bad defense by the Jazz. Some insane efficiency, actually, for some of these Bulls players. Kobe White goes 7 for 9 from the field. Starting for the Bulls now. Good for him. They gave him a new contract. That's looking pretty good so far. I really liked Kobe White coming out of the draft, and nice to see him doing well. 18 and 7. A nice mix for them. So, if you're a Bulls fan, it's pretty tough, but there's some bright spots. Kobe White is one of them. Alex Caruso continues to be one of the most dominant defensive players in the league, and he goes 3 for 3 in this game. Just a nice player. So they've got some pieces. They're not the worst team in the NBA, that's for sure. The Bulls will always be right in the middle, at least with how they're run. And that's what we saw tonight. The Bulls are a mid-level team, and the Jazz are not right now. Car Wash Channel. Thank you, Car Wash Channel. Can you please wash the stink of this Jazz loss off of me and every other Jazz fan? The comment reads, Jazz suck. By the way, thank you for the donation. $1.99. That's amazing. Thank you so much. Car Wash Channel. Jazz suck. Yes, they did tonight. They did tonight. One interesting thing before we dive in, the Minnesota Timberwolves beat the undefeated Boston Celtics, and Rudy Gobert looks dominant right now. So maybe that Wolves loss where the Jazz were actually pretty close and played them pretty well. Pretty good. Actually, did they get destroyed? I think they actually got pretty much destroyed. I think they just got pretty beat. I can't remember. It was not great. Car Wash Channel, another $1.99. Thank you, my man. Or woman. Thank you so much. We need to make some trades or play to win the game. Exactly. I agree. And another $1.99. Thank you so much, my friend. But $1.99 is amazing. And I agree. And we're going to talk about that because the Jazz need to decide what they're doing at this point. We need to decide because we've got a lot of things going on. And I feel like we're putting Will Hardy in an impossible situation where he's got to do like 3 or 4 things at once. And what happens with that is a lot. It's kind of a jack of all trades, master of none is kind of what's going on with the Jazz. And it's kind of a jack of all trades. Now they suck is kind of the saying for Utah. But let's get into this. If there was a bright spot, and this has been the bright spot of this season for the Jazz, it has been Lauri Markkanen and his play. He has been awesome. Tonight, he goes 8 for 15 from the field, 5 for 12. I mean, that's 53, 41, and 100. 8 for 8 from the free throw line. 29 points, 3 assists, 5 rebounds. He's just getting better. I need to write about this for SLC Dunk, and I might make a video about it too. Maybe a long form. I know that Playmakers wants me to make one, so I will. Playmakers. Get off my back. Get off my back. Doing my best. By the way, if you haven't already, I went to Instagram. I posted a new reel. I'm going to try doing more of those. Let me know if you liked it. Go to the Hoops Nerd Instagram. Check it out. I thought it was fun. I'm going to do more of those. It's also in the shorts here on YouTube. But anyways, Lauri Markkanen's been phenomenal, and we need to appreciate what he's doing because considering just how bad the Jazz's guard play has been, Car Wash Channel. 199 again, my man, Car Wash Channel. I'm a boy. All right, my man. Boy or man, either one. I'm so grateful to you, Car Wash Channel. Just to let you know, get Zach from Bulls. Maybe, but that's just basically the decision the Jazz have to make at a certain point. And I kind of feel like we already know, and we've seen some hints, and maybe we'll put on our tinfoil hat. We're kind of all over the place today. I appreciate everyone who's here because this Jazz loss was putrid. So if you are here, you're my best friend. You're literally my best friend. I love you. I love you. To Car Wash Channel, as a man to a man, I love you for the $1.99, and as a man to a man. And on this channel, reach through the screen, hug. There we go. Nice hug. Anyways, if you're here, you're amazing. I lost my train of thought. Oh, no, I was going to say, look, I got my hat from Jazz Plus. What do you think of my hat? I'm trying the dad hat thing. Now that I'm 40 years old. Can you believe that? That's the weirdest thing ever. And I got my shirt. Check it out. The finisher. So, the Utah Jazz, they get the nice play from Lauri Markkanen. The finisher. He's doing well. He's doing great. He's playing at an all-NBA level. And everyone else on this team either sucks or is a rookie or is playing for the G League, right? And so it's been a rough start to the season for the Jazz. They are now 8 games in. We will now have a 10-game sample here pretty soon. And so far, it's been... Now, we mentioned it before. The Minnesota Timberwolves, they beat the Boston Celtics. And in fact, let's just do this. Before we talk about how crappy the Jazz have been, let's give some little grains of salt. All right? Let's go to the Jazz of Utah. We're just on the good old basketball reference here. Let's go to the schedule and results. Obviously, they lose tonight. But if you look at these teams, these are all... Orlando is... What is Orlando's record now? They're 4-2. The Magic are good. And they were over 500 after... They started last season like 10-30. I don't know if you guys follow the Magic at all, but they started last season like 10-30. And then from the rest of that point on, they were like 45 and 30. So they're a good basketball. There was something like that, obviously. You can go look it up. But they're kind of like the opposite of the Jazz. The Jazz started hot last year, and then they just slowly got terrible. And some of that coincided with Mike Conley, but it coincided a lot with resting players and things like that. The Magic were different. They were like, and they're kind of like what the Jazz are now in some ways. There are some things to kind of compare. But they started off like horribly enough that they were able to out tank the Jazz by the end of the season. The Jazz really should have been this bad to start the year last year. If they didn't start 10-3, we'd be looking at a nicer pick probably. But anyways, then they were good. So they're good. Moral of this story is Chicago Bulls. I would say they're a 500 basketball team. Would anyone disagree with that? They are usually right in the middle, usually a play-in team. So they're not like a bad basketball team. They're an average team, I would say. Minnesota Timberwolves, number 1 defense in the NBA. They just beat the Boston Celtics tonight, who is the number 1 team in the league. And the Jazz in that game were pretty close for most of it, and then I think they got blown out at the end. I can't remember. Orlando Magic, 4-2. Good basketball team. Memphis Grizzlies are terrible. This was the one they should have won, and what did they do? They blew them out, 133, 109. Oh, yeah, look, I can look at scores. I have a brain. Oh, yeah, they got smoked by Minnesota. What am I talking about? They got smoked. Denver Nuggets, who were tired, but the Jazz played them close. They're the defending champions of the NBA and have been an absolute buzzsaw. The Jazz played them close, and I don't care what anyone says. Playing them close, even if they're tired, is something. I don't know. They're probably not playing as hard, but that's still something. They play against the Phoenix Suns, who are fantastic. You play against the Los Angeles Clippers, they actually get a win. And that was a good game. And then they play against the Sacramento Kings. They got smoked. Well, that game was actually closer until the Kings kind of pulled away. Anyways, the moral of the story is the Jazz have had a really tough schedule to start. So there's some glimmer of something there. It's a very small glimmer. The batteries are dying. But there's something there. When you turn the key in the ignition, it's at least making a sound, right? Now, it doesn't mean the Jazz are good. I'm not here to say the Jazz are actually good, because they're not. They suck. Car Wash Channel is correct. But there are some things to consider going on here, and I do think there are some stories going on that you need to dive in that you can see. But what the Jazz need to do, and we've mentioned this before, is they've got to make a decision. Who do you want to be? What is your goal? What are you doing? And I have heard a few things. I would, if I were you, I would not blame this on Will Hardy. If I were you, you can say what you want. That's your right. I have a hard time believing that a coach that took this team, that had a team of players he had never coached before, a whole new set of guys, takes them 10-3 to start the season. He was the lead guy and led that. He was the X's and O's guy for the Boston Celtics, who went to the championship. I have a hard time believing that guy over the summer just became bad. I mean, I could be wrong. But the guy who also turned Lauri Markkanen, who was with 3 or 4 other coaches, by the way, before he did this, and has allowed him to be able to do these things that he did in Euro Cup on an NBA floor, something no other coach was able to do. Is he somehow bad? I don't think so. So that's just my take, though. Take it for what you will. I would say allow him, maybe he can go 6 playoff series and get out coached in all but 1, like Quinn Snyder. And, then maybe you decide he's not really a playoff coach, but we'll see. Anyways, let's get into this. Lauri Markkanen, he played really well. John Collins has been quietly really solid for the Jazz. Defensively, not good enough. That is one thing that we are seeing, and that's why I don't know if John Collins is the long-term answer, but he is certainly a starting rotation level player, and there is some value there. In fact, I was talking to my mom. My mom and dad are visiting. They're upstairs, and they had to listen to me yell and gripe and curse and spit during that game. But one thing I just came up with, I think I'm either going to write about it on SLC Dunk, or I might just do it on this channel for fun. But we might, like the Kill, Marry, Kiss, or whatever it is. Isn't that a game that the youngins play? We might play trade, cut, or extend, right? I think that might be fun, and do it with every player. I think that would be a fun thing. But I would say overall, John Collins has been an average rotation level NBA starter. And that's a win, considering the Jazz had to give nothing for him. Honestly, nothing. They may not even convey that second-round pick. I don't have the time to look it up. But that second-round pick is very likely not even to convey. And then you've got Walker Kessler, who the more I watch this season, the more I'm like, I wish Walker Kessler was on the floor more. That is one thing I don't know what's going on with Will Hardy. Although at times I can't blame him. Walker Kessler has been so in his head. Actually, if you go to the Trib, I forgot. It's not Andy Larson, the other writer. I forgot his name. He wrote a great one about Walker Kessler, talking about what's going on. And it sounds very much like it's all in his head. That he basically had a bad situation with Team USA. It was interesting. This is one thing I wanted to talk about too. Is we usually talk about going to play for Team USA as being a great thing. And I think the whole experience for Walker Kessler was actually bad. I think Steve Kerr was terrible for him. His confidence just is gone. And I actually think that, Steve Kerr was a big part of that, because Walker Kessler should have played more in that series. And Steve Kerr's not a good enough coach to figure out how to play him. And he comes back from that not having a lot of confidence, not feeling like he belongs. And he comes to this Jazz team and he's got all these expectations. And I think there's just a lot going mentally for him that he's just got to figure out. And so every time you have a game like this where he actually puts up numbers, and in that article he talked about looking at his stats. Well, this is, 15 and 15, that's solid stuff. You'd like to see the percentage go up. He missed a hook shot and he was 4 for 6 from the free throw line, which is actually really promising. So if you look at this stat line, considering how Walker Kessler has struggled this year, I would be happy with that. And I think Walker Kessler, also he hit a 50% from 3. So I don't know. I'm not too worried about Walker Kessler. I think he's got some mental things to figure out, just confidence stuff. And who knows, maybe he never does, but I have a feeling he will. And he just needs to figure out what and who he is as a player, and I think that's what he's doing. He's kind of come from Team USA, where he's being told he doesn't have the skill set to be on the floor with some of these young players, and he's coming to the Jazz feeling like he's not good enough, and he's pushing himself to become a three-point shooter and all these things. But it's got to be a little hard, and that's not what he's made his bread and butter on as an NBA player so far. So trying to expand his skill set, learning how to be a stretch big when he's mostly been a shot blocking near the basket big, that's got to be difficult. And so he's in a little bit of a identity crisis, I guess, as a player, and he'll figure it out. It looks like he already is. I mean, you have a night like this where he goes 15 from 15, 15 and 15, and then he goes 1 for 2 from 3, shoots 4 for 6 from the free throw line. Just looking at these raw stats, and I know the field goal percentage isn't what you want it to be, but you'll take it considering how he's struggled. So to me, that's a bright spot right there. Shall we get to the bad news? Jordan Clarkson, Talen Horton-Tucker, Chris Dunn, and Collin Sexton have been terrible this year. They've been terrible. They've had their moments. But look at this. Jordan Clarkson has been... It is hard to describe how bad Jordan Clarkson has been for the Jazz this year. I mean, it is so objectively bad. And his body language was very clear. He is not feeling great about his play, and he shouldn't be. 3 for 14 from the field, 1 for 8 from 3. He scores 7 points with 6 assists and 5 turnovers. He almost has as many turnovers as points in this game. A minus 14. This is why you lose games. Now, we re-sign Jordan Clarkson, and what's the thing we always hear online and from multiple people is he's Ryan Smith's favorite player. Well, Ryan Smith got him, and this is what's going on. And, when you have an owner that wants this guy and maybe a coach is being asked, I don't know. I don't know what's going on, but this is bad. And he was coming off the bench to start the year, which was the right choice, but Collin Sexton is so bad at passing the ball to literally anyone that they had to play Jordan Clarkson. And the issue with Keyonte George right now is he does need to start, but he isn't ready. He's not quite there. He's got the flashes, and I think he should be regardless, because I still think even though he's not ready to be a winning, playoff caliber guard yet, he is still the best option for this team, and he is going to become a winning and playoff caliber guard in the future. So what are we waiting for? Well, that's the thing, is we don't know. Half the time, that's the answer. There are things going on in this locker room that we don't know about, that you don't know, that I don't know, that only they know. And they're not going to let them out because there's going to be some sort of movement here at some point. And a lot of times when you have a bunch of players playing like this, with it going really badly, that usually means two things. Someone's hurt. So Walker Kessler, who got his arm extended by freaking Domantas Sabonis in that first game, might have been playing hurt. That may be just as simple as that with some of this. Or someone got wind of a trade. These guys know. Do you guys know how many trades go through these teams? There were honestly, probably 6-7 years ago. I shouldn't even say these things, but like 8 years ago, we had a source within the Jazz. We did. We knew things that were going on. We had actually a couple. And there were all sorts of things that come to the table. There are calls all the time. There are trades that actually, so if you want to do an NBA trade, it has to be signed off by the owner. You've got like multiple parties that have to talk about it. And this is why guys like Woj and Shams can learn about these things and tweet about them. Or like Jake Fisher, who, by the way, if you're not following Jake Fisher, he is 100% my number one now. He is the number one. He is the best. If you are not following Jake Fisher and have him on notifications, you're missing out, because he is the best NBA reporter. He's like outshining Woj and Shams, in my opinion. Anyways, these things come all the time. And there have been trades in the past, from what I've heard, that went to ownership. And they have to sign off on it too. So an owner has to say, yes, I want to do this, or no, I don't. Guys, owners matter in the NBA. And I'm not saying Ryan Smith's not a good owner. I think Ryan Smith is a fantastic owner. But they do sometimes make decisions. And one of those things is Jordan Clarkson. And I'm not saying Ryan Smith is telling Will Hardy to play, Jordan Clarkson. I don't think that's the case. I think Will Hardy has some things going on now, though, that he's not allowed to do. But anyways, I don't know where I'm going with this, but I think there's a lot of things that go on. Oh, that's what I'm trying to say. These players hear about these things. So if there's some sort of discussion going on, let's say a trade is starting to be developed, like, we heard the rumor about THT to Houston. That was a real thing. And that may not be done. Just because they finished talking to Houston doesn't mean other teams weren't hearing about it and saying, hey, we would like to be involved. What about this? What about that? What if we send you this guy? And players hear about it too, because agents get a whiff of these things and they want to have a say because, so-and-so player doesn't want to go there. So-and-so player wants to stay here. So-and-so player wants to go to a situation where he can get minutes so he can play. There's all sorts of these things that go on. And my guess is there's a little bit of that going on behind the scenes, that some of these players have heard some of these things and they're all trying to get their points, because in the end, there's two things players want. One, they obviously would like to win, but what they probably want a little bit more is to get paid, like all of us do. And so there's a little bit of that, I think, going on with THT, with Collin Sexton for sure. Although Collin Sexton got his contract, so I don't know. It could also be he's just really not good at passing the ball to other players, to be honest. But Jordan Clarkson and Talen Horton-Tucker have been just not very good to start. Now, like we said, it's been against really good teams. The Jazz have had a really tough schedule to start. And what's good news for Jazz fans, and why the tank is probably not going to happen, is that the Jazz, before the season started, before this stretch of games, were considered to have one of the weakest schedules in the NBA. So we're going through the hardest of it right now. Right now. It will get better. And I wonder if the Jazz knew that this start of the season was going to be absolutely brutal, and they're just letting Jordan Clarkson and Talen Horton-Tucker and Collin Sexton and those guys take the brunt of that, give them a chance to prove it too. Like if they, it can be sink or swim, and we've been sinking, but there was a chance for them to really swim and really say, hey, THT is actually a legit starting NBA point guard in the NBA. I think we've kind of learned he's a sixth man. Because there's been moments where THT has been really solid this year for the Jazz. He's had great moments. And then he's had moments where it's been just brutal. Like tonight. Look at this. This is the sign of bad point guard play. Jordan Clarkson, Talen Horton-Tucker, 10 turnovers between the two. Just the two of them. 5 for Jordan Clarkson, 5 for Talen Horton-Tucker. That's brutal. That is brutal to overcome. And when you combine the 5 turnovers for each of them, and then you have 2 for 5 from Horton-Tucker, 3 for 14 from Jordan Clarkson, and then this type of 3-point shooting, I mean, come on. I don't know what Will Hardy is supposed to do. Now, everyone and me knows one thing we can do, and that's start Keyonte George, right? That's what everyone wants. That's what I want. I'm sure that's what everyone wants. I mean, maybe there's a few out there. I know once in a while we get a few comments and it's like, no, THT is the best. Everyone has a fan. Everyone's got a mother. But I think most people are I'm losing my train. Oh, there it goes. I had a notification come through. Levon Panhurst, $4.99. Jazz are unwatchable. Turnovers tonight were high school level-esque. It was bad. And this does, Levon, you're right. They are very much like playing AAU type ball right now when it's Jordan Clarkson and Talen Horton-Tucker. I mean, some of the plays that Jordan Clarkson was making tonight were absolutely terrible. They were horrible. Horrible. So you're right. And $4.99 is so generous. Thank you so much, Levon. I appreciate it a ton. Isikali Raisibe, Australian $2.99. That means they are even, I don't know. That was going to be such a stupid joke. I stopped it before it happened. Good insight from another Jazz fan in his 40s. Isikali, 40 club, baby. 40 and flirty. Oh, but $2.99 Australian. By the way, Ezekiel, I think you got 2 All-Star memberships. Make sure. I don't want to overcharge you. So make sure. Maybe cancel one of them. The one that doesn't have the purple ball, but I don't know which because they're both Ezekiel Raisibe. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Anyways, I think there's more going on behind the scenes, and I am pretty darn sure that there is something going on where Keyonte George is not allowed to start yet. And I guess there, when you look at the schedule, uh, wink, wink, then that means that I think this Jazz team wanted this front of the schedule to be really rough. They knew it was going to be rough. And so it kind of made a lot of sense. And there's some quotes if you look back. I was thinking about that quote. I think it was Will Hardy made it, that you don't really know what you have for the first 25 games. Kind of a one-off quote. You probably don't think about it too much because you're like, yeah, that makes sense. But when you consider the fact how bad the Jazz have been, how tough their schedule has been, I wonder if they're just trying to protect Keyonte a little bit, where Steve Kerr was an absolute monstrosity as a coach for Team USA basketball. I think the Jazz are really trying to make sure that the Keyonte George doesn't lose his confidence. Now, I think at a certain point, I think Keontae's got it. And when you watch him play, he looks great. I mean, his turnover rate is too high. It is. If you go to the advanced stats, his turnover rate is it's high, but he's also a rookie. But guess what? When you've got, this type of turnover rate too, it's not. That's the thing is would you rather have a rookie working through mistakes, or would you rather have veterans like Jordan Clarkson just making them? They should know better. Taylor Horton-Tucker, I know how young he is. He's also been in the league 4 or 5 years. So at a certain point, you've been in the league enough that you should start to be able to how long is it until you're not young anymore, right? You're still really young at 22. Believe me, I'd love to be 22 again. But when you've been in the league 4 or 5 years, you've been around the block. You've been multiple coaches, multiple training camps, multiple rotations, NBA minutes against, hundreds of NBA players. At some point, you've got to be somewhat a veteran, right? So I don't know. So I think when you look at Keyonte George, and people will say, well, his numbers, I felt like Keyonte played pretty well tonight with a couple bad turnovers, a couple rookie mistakes against a team that has 2 really good perimeter defenders. Javon Carter and Alex Caruso are about as good of perimeter defenders as there are in the NBA. You could argue one of the best duos in the NBA, honestly, if you think about it. If you're just talking about pure perimeter defenders, those 2 are really good. And so I don't think it should be surprising that Keyonte has a couple turnovers. But he plays 20 minutes. That's right around what Taylor Horton-Tucker's playing. That's the thing I'm noticing. And one thing we should be happy about as Jazz fans, and why I think Will Hardy would start him if he could, is he's playing this many minutes. He is sitting him when he makes mistakes, so I think that's good. But I think that at some point, you've got to start him. And now, maybe Will Hardy is wanting to wait. Maybe that's Will Hardy straight up. Maybe there isn't some sort of mandate, I think I've heard mention that there's a 20-minute limit online. I think that's actually out there. And look at this, 20 minutes. It's literally glaring us in the face. And so I think Will Hardy probably is just being told 20 minutes a game to try to develop him. But I would play him 36 if I was, and just let him develop. But anyways, you put him in this lineup, you're going to have mistakes. And here's the thing. You've got, like we talked about, all these players, they're guys too. They want to get their contracts. If they lose their minutes, if they get ousted by a rookie guard, that doesn't look good for them. They're not worried about, Keyonte George playing like you and me are. Taylor Horton-Tucker wants to start. He wants to play. He wants to get as many minutes and prove he's an NBA caliber guard so he can get another contract, right? Keyonte George is a rookie. He's not interested in him playing. Taylor Horton-Tucker wants to play. Same with Jordan Clarkson. Although Jordan Clarkson got his contract, I think Jordan Clarkson would be fine sitting. That's why I think there is something there. I actually think the Jazz need to move Keyonte George to the starting lineup, play it with Taylor Horton-Tucker. I think that would be it would be an improved starting lineup. I think Jordan Clarkson has not proven that he's going to be a winning guard against these good teams. This is kind of sadly what happens with him when you play elite teams. We've seen this in the playoffs. He doesn't really show up when you're playing those elite playoff caliber teams. There's a fall off there. He does great against average teams, and although tonight he didn't, and some of those bad teams, and he does really well in certain situations off the bench when he doesn't need to worry about passing the ball so much, just score the ball and be who he is. I think he's really good. He's been playing outside of what he does, and he's been trying to be a point guard, and it's just not really his game. And so I think they got to Keyonte George. It's just a matter of when. It's not if. He is going to be the starting guard. But like we said, there are some personalities there you've got to consider. And there's other guys, although I think actually these other guys would probably be fine with Keyonte George starting. I can tell you right now, if you watch closely in some of these games, there was one play where Kelly Olynyk had the ball and they were going in transition, and there was actually an outlet to Collin Sexton, and it probably was the right play. And Kelly Olynyk, you could see he was gonna pass it and he pulled it back. There are guys literally not throwing it to Collin Sexton right now because they are tired of the black hole there where it's just a bad play. If you give Collin Sexton the ball, basically at this point, I mean, look at this. Did he get an assist today? I think he got 2. So to his credit. But there are a lot of players that saying, if I give him the ball, I ain't getting it back. If I give him the ball, then I can just accept he's probably taking a shot. Unless Collin Sexton comes down as the point guard and initiates the offense, then that sometimes might end up in an assist. But if Collin Sexton gets the ball in transition, or if you're giving him the ball after your first initial actions in the offense, you ain't getting it back. That's just basically what it is. And I'm noticing myself, certain players are just like getting a little tired of it. And I think the coaches too. That's why he's playing 16 minutes. 16 minutes. And this included garbage time, guys. And so, do you want another glimmer of hope? A little bit of hope for everyone hoping for a lineup change? We have now seen 4 to 5 games in a row now where Keyonte George is like the first player off the bench with Kelly Olynyk. So Kelly Olynyk is like the first sub, and then Keyonte George is the first guard. It used to be Collin Sexton. Keyonte George is ahead of him, and it's been the last 5 games. And he's just been getting more minutes. And one thing I noticed tonight is there was a little bit of initiative there from Keyonte George that makes me really happy, in that he was going to the basket. One of the things that's been neutered with Keyonte, which I'm dying to see again, is him driving to the basket. When he was in Summer League, I mean, you remember him scoring 30 points in that opener in Vegas? What was he doing? Well, he shot like 10 free throws. Why? Because he was driving to the basket, and he was scoring half of his points in transition and driving to the hoop. And so that's a part of his game that has just kind of disappeared. And what he's been trying to do is trying to show that he is trying to set everyone else up. He has been so unselfish. And I'm trying to figure out what Will Hardy, I mean, honestly, he should just play him. I think Will Hardy's in an impossible spot because the Jazz really haven't figured out exactly what they're doing. They really haven't. Are we trying to make the playoffs? Are we trying to develop young players? What are we trying to do? Because we're trying to do both, and it's not really working. And what's especially rough is that the guys ahead of Keyonte arguably are worse than he is, right? I don't think honestly, at this point, I don't know if it's a debate. He's just better. And so he's in this impossible situation where he's being asked to do 2 things and do it with the players he probably doesn't want in the rotations he probably doesn't want to do. You know? I think Jordan Clarkson should be coming off the bench. I think Jordan Clarkson probably thinks he should be coming off the bench as a 6th man at this point. You know? I just don't know if they're being allowed to do it. And so Keyonte George needs to be given the reins. And the only way the Jazz are going to be able to do that and give him the reins to this carriage is make some moves. They've got to make the trades. And I think the Jazz, that's exactly what they want to do. I just don't know if it's there. And the problem, too, is that Jordan Clarkson and Taylor Horton-Tucker and Collin Sexton and all these guys have been so bad. I mean, Collin Sexton's putting up numbers, so maybe there's an idiot owner or GM out there that will want him. That's why the Jazz got the Rudy Gobert trade, is because Alex Rodriguez wanted him really bad and was willing to do whatever it took and didn't care. He thought picks were candy, and so that trade was amazing. So I think maybe Collin Sexton can get something out there. We know that Milwaukee had some interest in him. But I lost my train of thought. I'm just so kind of over it with some of these. But they've got to make a trade so that Keyonte George can get the ball. And I don't know what you do, because there's another element to this that you've got to consider. And I'm going to write about this, but I'm going to tell you guys what I wanted to write about. Is I don't know if the goal is necessarily make the playoffs this year. I think the goal this year is to just get the buy-in from Lauri Markkanen. You know, because we've heard a lot of the guys close to the Jazz talk about how, you know, they need to show Lauri Markkanen they're a winning team and things like that. Well, I think what they're trying to do is show Lauri Markkanen that's what they are. And I think I think Lauri Markkanen, honestly, if I was going to bet, I think Lauri Markkanen is going to be on the Jazz for a long time. I don't really feel all that worried. I think they're going to give him a max. He's going to likely make, well, they got to win more games, so hopefully they can, so he can make All NBA. But at the same time, Alex Sarr is looking pretty darn good in the draft. I'm not going to lie. But anyways, if they can just get Lauri Markkanen bought in, then I think they're good to go. Because if you can keep Lauri Markkanen, you can develop Keyonte George, you can develop Taylor Hendricks, Walker Kessler, and then maybe get another guy, and then Lauri Markkanen, if he knows that this is going the way he wants it, I'm sure he'll re-sign. He will. But they've got, right now, the Jazz are in the worst spot. It is an impossible spot. And so they've got to figure out how to figure that out so they can give the reins to Keyonte George and let him play through his mistakes. C-Dog, even Keyonte got pickpocketed by Andre freaking Drummond. Need a solid, safe ASAP. Yeah, I mean, it was not good. I saw it too. It was bad. But that was 2 turnovers, you know. That's the thing with Keyonte George. You're going to see rookie mistakes. You're going to have things like that happen. But one thing that I did see and that I really liked was that he was driving to the basket. He had 4 assists in 20 minutes. He's moving the ball. And what I really liked is that he drove to the basket. And every time Keyonte George drives to the basket, good things happen. Whereas whenever I see Taylor Horton-Tucker or Jordan Clarkson or Collin Sexton drive to the basket, it is cringe. It is really bad, you know? And so it's just something different. And yes, like if you want to like say Keyonte George is not ready, he's not. And that's likely why the Jazz are kind of giving him this grace period to kind of get his feet wet, kind of get acclimated and figure things out, make some mistakes, figure out a few things that you can't quite do yet, figure out what you can, and then go. And I think he's just ready. One thing I want to see, though, is this jump shot. And I think that's one thing he's got to figure out, and this will get better with time, is just his shooting percentages, too. Because that's one thing. If his shooting percentages go up, then holy smokes. Get ready for just absolute lights out play. It's going to get there. Another one that's I've been a little disappointed with. I feel like the last 2 games, though, from Ochai Agbaji have been promising. I know the numbers don't show it, but he's looking more and more viable, and I think they're going to start trying to play him more. Chris Dunn has been pretty rough. I mean, he had bad turnover. I don't even think this is accurate. I think he had more than 2 turnovers. It's been rough. I honestly struggle for him to even handle the ball in the lane against some of these good teams. It's been really disappointing. Really bad. I want to keep Chris Dunn on the team, but I'd rather him be kind of if someone gets hurt, then you play Chris Dunn type thing rather than him getting regular rotation, and who knows, maybe he can get better, but man, it's been a rough start for him. It's been really bad guard play for the Jazz, guys. It's been really bad. And so there's no way around it. I think that's pretty much it for tonight, unless anyone else had any other questions, but you know what? Let's just accept the fact that Lauri Markkanen is playing just at an incredible level. 29 points in 34 minutes. Just the efficiency is monstrous. He had a block shot. I mean, he's looking so good. And so if you can develop Keyonte George, you can find some more guys. They're going to try to make some moves. I am sure of it. It's just going to take some time. But, right now the Jazz have some things to figure out. Look at this. This is before tonight. It's just going to get worse. There's only 2 teams that have a worse defense than the Utah Jazz, and that's the Spurs and Wizards. That's crazy with Wemby. They're that bad. I mean, they're really bad, the Spurs are. Number 1 offense in the league, the Indiana Pacers. How crazy is that? Over the Boston Celtics. By the way, the Boston Celtics are the number 2 offense and the number 4 defense. That right there, when you're top 5, that's championship. Denver Nuggets, top 5 defense. Denver Nuggets, top 6. So also championship caliber. Really good. So, and the Jazz haven't played the Celtics, but they have definitely played the number 1 Minnesota Timberwolves, who beat the Celtics today. So pretty tough stuff for this Jazz team. All right. Well, have we said enough? Have we commiserated enough? 40 minutes on a Jazz loss of 20 plus. Oh my gosh. It's pretty bad, guys. It's pretty bad. But it'll get better. All right, let's give a shout out to our All-Stars, should we? Let's pull up the music. Like as always, guys, thank you so much for supporting the channel. All of you being here is amazing. I appreciate it a ton. Make sure if you're new here and you're a Jazz fan, you like and subscribe to the channel. I would appreciate it very much. And guess what? We're now on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, the Hoops Nerd Show. So go search it out. Go give me a review, guys. It would be amazing. Go search Hoops Nerd Podcast. Give a review. 5 stars. I would appreciate it. Also, like and subscribe to this channel. Let's see. Let's give a shout out to the All-Stars. Oh my gosh, I pulled it up and it came down. All right, let's bring this up. There we go. All right, let's give a shout out to Ezekiel Raisibe, the man from Down Under. No, so nice. He subscribed twice. Yes, Jake C. Can, Christian House Money to Haas. See ya, Lexa later. Built Ford Tough, Alexander Tufts. Jorge Arrizaga Mimigo de Abajo. Jordan the Goat Besserell. TGD Total Game Domination. Tyson Price, The Price is Right. Austin R. Grant, Editor Extraordinaire. DW the CB Darren Williams to Carlos Boozer. Patrick Kubo the Connoisseur. And Robert Hall of Fame. Guys, you're amazing. Thanks for coming to the channel. Shout out to Lauri Markkanen. Shout out to the Jazz. Hopefully they can figure it out. And if you're new, like and subscribe. Go to Prize Picks. Use promo code HoopsNerd. I will talk to you next time.